Welcome to another episode of Words on New Music. I'm Jim Goodin in New York, and Paul Muller is out in Los Angeles. This episode, we are going to review a couple of pieces of music. This was from the weekend of September 20th to the 22nd. We'll play works by those two artists and talk a little bit about them. So I'm going to toss the camera out to Paul out in Los Angeles.
Our first artist from this past event is Kawol Samarkand, and Kawol is from Yokohama, Japan. He's a guitar player. He's described himself as self-employed. I'm not sure Kawol Samarkand is his real name. I think that's a pseudonym, trying to evoke some of the mysteries of the Silk Road and China and those kinds of things, and it's very effective. I think that's the kind of mood his music is trying to establish. On his website, it says that he began to play the guitar when he was 12. He began composing things when he was 14, and he began performing by the time he was 17. So he's been at this for a while. In 1997, Kawol launched a record label called Plaka for Eardrum. In 2000, he joined with another fellow, Yasuhiko Ochi, a bass player, and they formed a duet, and they were performing. In 2004, he started a solo concert series. By 2008, he was streaming a show, maybe much like this one, Kawol's Live Line. His studio was in his bedroom, so he was maybe one of the first do-it-yourselfers. In 2011, he began an internet radio broadcast program, Kawol's radio station. He has a website on google.com, sites.google.com/site/Kawol of Samarkand, Kawolofsamarkand. And he also has a SoundCloud site. You can find him as Kawol, Kawol Samarkand, Samarkand. He has a little poem that he puts on his website that I think describes his music quite well. It's almost a haiku, I guess. Rolling strings, quivering voice, he is an enigma of ancient Samarkand.
Wow.
And I think that's what he's going for. He's going for kind of mystery and history. Also on his website, he has another quote here for all of us. So, sit down straight and merely play it. Depend on nothing. So it sounds like he's an all-in improviser. What we're going to hear tonight is a piece of his called Indifferent Cat. She is strolling in the autumn town, number 2.
I found myself thinking almost kind of Jim Hall through there in a way. I mean, it was a pure acoustic track, which is, I think, everything that he has brought in his times to sound in, at least that I know of, have been largely acoustic and fairly intimate like that. There were some early Jim Hall recordings done, I guess, probably 60s and 70s. That it almost had that kind of sound, and those like a just a very quiet recording. A lot of space between the notes, obviously, and it's interesting. There was some, it's an acoustic guitar, but when he's beginning, um, maybe it's Japanese heritage, but there was a little bit of almost like a koto sound going on to my ears. What was your read on it?
Well, I agree. It sounded at first to me a little bluesy, but I think you're right. There's an interesting interplay of traditions going on here. You can hear the Japanese influence in the way he begins and the space between the notes, and that's very elegant. And yet you can hear that he's been listening to blues guitars and some of the other people you mentioned. I thought this piece evoked a nice sort of casual intent and the curiosity that would be typical of a stroll, in the evening in the autumn. I think that was what he's trying to bring out here. Some of the discord and the spiky sections struck me as kind of sharp, almost like a cat's paw. The cat stops to sharpen his claws on the fence or something. It has a kind of a meandering feel. The way a cat walks down a new alley, it stops here, goes over there, and it kind of meanders around. So, I thought it was a well-played improvisation. You're exactly right. He has a very intimate sound, and it's very quiet and smooth. I enjoyed this. You can just kind of see the lights. In the evening it's getting darker quicker. It's a little cooler. We're walking through the town. You can just feel autumn coming in. It had that same kind of feel for me.
One thing we should probably mention, every weekend on Sound In, and Sound In was known as Improv Friday for several years. It was a recent decision that it was kind of time to give, it's been a really successful community, and we wanted to give it a facelift. So we got a new name. It's sound-in.org on the web, but it's still the same kind of concept in what we're doing, which is just each weekend music from a range of influences, a range of artists around the world who are members of this great community. And some weekends we have a theme. The theme this weekend was autumn. I think it was a theme that was really prevalent in all the pieces that I heard. I will say that. It was a lovely track, and it's a nice time of year here in New York. How's it in California?
Hot. September for us is the hottest month of the year.
Wow.
And it's been hotter than normal, and it's driving us nuts. I live in Ventura near the ocean, and nobody here has air conditioning because it seldom gets above 75 degrees. But, man, when it gets 80 and 85 degrees, it really seems, like a lot. So we're struggling with the heat here still, but I can tell it'll change, and it'll, come October and November, it'll be nice and clear and cooler. But I know exactly what you're saying. After the heat of the summer in a place like New York or through much of the country, it's really nice to have that first, crisp day of autumn or cool evening, and that it affects everybody. And you could hear it in Kawol's piece, as the others that we heard this weekend.
But wow, every time I've been in California, it's been cold as the dickens here in New York, and it's been wonderful out there. One of the greatest memories I've gotten every time I've come out for NAMM shows and whatever, I'll get off the plane, and it's January. I'll leave here, it's about 8 degrees. I'll get off the plane in Long Beach, and it's just beautiful.
75, there. Yeah, sure.
So I can't imagine, but it's been hot in September. That's pretty.
Yeah, that's our hot time of the year. The coldest time of the year, hard to believe, at least here on the coast, is July.
Really?
July, the fog comes in and you'll shiver on the beach.
Wow.
And you can always tell the tourists, they're coming from the east. July, and they got their swimsuits on, their the towels, the whole thing. They're going to jump in the water, and of course the water is like 60 degrees, and they can't believe it. That it's as cool as it is. But that's just our seasons. We do it a little differently here.
Well, it's a pretty neat place. I know every time I've been out there. But who's up next? Who else are we gonna?
Well, the next one we're going to listen to tonight is one of my favorite people. And when he posts as Johnny and Faith, and Johnny and Faith are Johnny and Faith Porto. Johnny is from, as near as we can tell, rural eastern Pennsylvania. We're Facebook friends, and he's always got pictures of his farm that he lives on and the fields and so on. But he seems to be close enough to the city to root for the Phillies and so on. So it's an interesting, borderline he must live on. He's got one foot in rural Appalachia, the other foot in the city. He's a guitar player. The best way to describe his music is experimental country and western.
I love that.
And that sounds crazy, but that's exactly what it is. On his website, he has a description of it: amazing muses and amusing mazes, headphone trips through space and time, acid jazz, bug, abstract, ambient, radio grays, mangled and remangled for your pleasure.
Wow.
And that's just Johnny. I mean, he really has an offbeat perspective, and it's really very enjoyable. His other interests include the Philadelphia Phillies, stock car racing, and I don't know of a man who loves dogs any more than Johnny does. He's he's always got one laying down there while he's drinking beer on the couch. And I think he lost one of his long-term dogs, and that really, you could tell it really hurt him. He's also politically, a Ron Paul follower, and the funny thing is that I'm, a raging socialist, and he is, to the right of the Tea Party, and we get along and talk about politics. A lot of stuff we agree on. We agree on probably half of what we talk about. He also puts on his website, hugged all the pretty girls, especially my gorgeous wife, drank some beer, played sneaker pull with Tybo, my dog, slept, played the guitar, banged on the drums, drank some beer, recorded stuff, did some stuff, walked the dogs. and that sounds like a pretty good lifestyle, if that's what you're doing. So he has a YouTube channel, J/F/T Films. You might check that out. It's got some of his pieces. What we're going to hear tonight is classic Johnny and Faith, and it's on theme. The title of it is Autumn Drives the Mice Indoors, and of course this is a rural issue. I expect if you have field mice in the winter, they want to become indoor mice. And I'm thinking, well, geez, that sounds like a nuisance. What do? Call the exterminator or something? Well, when we listen to it, we'll have Johnny's take on it, and you'll be surprised how interesting it turns out to be.
Well, I will say that I think that's playfully Johnny, he always does. I think one piece, and I think that was when, understandably, I remember I was down in Florida, and I think that weekend or around that time he had lost a long time, family friend, and I think that was the only dark piece I've ever heard come out of his creative space. But that one was, I could see the Mousies
Yeah.
running through that. That was pretty cute.
Well, that's pure Johnny, as you said. It's an offbeat kind of thing, but it's exactly on target. In this piece, you can hear the mice. Well, they're going to move indoors, and they're making an opera out of it.
Right.
We think the mice just want to be warm, but what Johnny is saying is that they have a sort of artistic marking of the seasons. They're going to sing about going indoors, and you wouldn't think that mice would mark the changes in season with a song, but Johnny makes it convincingly plausible. And there's such an absence of malice in this. I mean, a lot of people would think, geez, the mice are coming. Get the shotgun, or get more cats, or call the exterminator. Johnny sees this as part of the natural order of things. He doesn't hate the mice for wanting to come indoors. He understands what they're doing, and he sees it as part of the natural order. So for 1 minute and 22 seconds, I'm standing there with the mice, and we're all going to march indoors. It's the turning of the season. It's a big event. And I was caught up in mouse culture there for 1.5 minutes. I really enjoyed it.
And when he hears our commentary, he's going to wonder what have we been smoking?
Well, we could turn that question around.
Yeah,
but
we could.
I dare him then to counter. Wasn't that what he was trying to get across to us? Maybe we've misinterpreted it, but that's what I heard, and I thought it was very convincing.
No, it was great. I thought that was quite a dramatic spin, but I could hear the little buggers too. I could hear, and we actually had one in our apartment here in Brooklyn. We probably should have more, but we got 3 cats, so that minimized it. But one got through the gates and was cornered and bravely had its time unfortunately ended by my wife, who's attempted to set it free, but it didn't work out. But the cats were most excited. The thing I was thinking about was tape rewind. I was hearing all through whether he's doing a sample there or analog tape rewinding the whole time. But he really does bring, precisely as your write-up, he talked about his web write-up is a very playful view towards life, it seems, which is, great to
Well,
say.
yeah, a lot to admire, Johnny,
Yeah,
both in what he can do artistically and his lifestyle of stock car racing and dogs, and promoting Ron Paul.
Yeah.
I kind of envy him and have some affection for him. He seems, to have found a niche there that really is very well suited. He isn't trapped like a lot of us, in the urban rat race. So
Yeah.
he can celebrate the mice returning indoors, whereas we're looking for a way to get rid of them.
He really does bring that sort of sense of fun to it. He and Jeff Duke remind me a bit of each other, and I've never met Johnny, but just in their presence in our community. Community we're talking about, I mentioned this earlier, and I feel like I need to say this more because it was called Improv Friday, and it's got a 4 or 5 year history. I've been a member in it for 2 years. It's a gathering of musicians from around the world. We all get together, and from Thursday afternoon to Saturday evening, we just post music, generally created within that time. And some weekends we'll have a theme, and it'll be, cats, and so everybody will do their spin of what that brings to mind. This particular weekend was the theme of autumn, as we talked about in Kawol's piece, and Johnny's too. I mean, the mice are, going in to stay warmer. But what I was trying to get to is that Improv Friday, we recently gave it a name change, a facelift. and just it was a change is good for most creatures, and we decided it was for us as well. And we are now called sound-in.org on the web, or better known as just Sound In. Well, Paul, what else? Those are the two people were featured. What else you been listening to lately?
Well, what I've been listening to is the Schoenberg Piano Concerto.
Hmm.
And you can get this on YouTube. The whole thing, all 40 minutes of it, is there by Alfred Brendel. And I'm not sure which orchestra. I'm rereading Everything Else Is Noise, I think, by Alex Ross. And it's kind of a history of the 20th century of modern music. And of course, Schoenberg features very prominently in this. And the poor guy is, being blamed for the destruction of classical music in the 20th and 21st centuries. If it wasn't for Schoenberg, it would all be pretty. And of course, with his serial atonal style, it was quite controversial in its day. But what struck me about this piece, and it was written in 1942, is how familiar the language and syntax is, apart from the lack of melody and the harmonic structure that we're normally used to. I think it captures perfectly the kind of the angst of the war years in 1942. This piece does use a 12-tone system, but the gestures are very similar to the classical piano concerto. And so this makes it very accessible. So if you've not heard Schoenberg or seem a little intimidated by a 12-tone serial piece, this is very accessible. I found a quote from Lou Harrison, no less, about this particular piece. He says, "One of the major joys is the structure of the phrases. You know when you are hearing a theme, a building or answering phrase, a development or a coda. There is no swerving from the form-building nature of these classical phrases. The pleasure to be had from listening to them is the same that one has from hearing the large forms of Mozart. This is a feeling too seldom communicated in contemporary music, in much of which the most obvious formal considerations are not evident at all." So, Lou Harrison is describing the same thing. It's very familiar in its structure, if not its tonal or harmonic language. And by that, it kind of expands your horizons. This is epic music. You listen to it, and I listen to it when I wait for the train in the afternoon. And boy, it just makes me feel like I'm 10 feet tall, or I'm in the middle of something important. There's this Schoenberg in the background, and the train is pulling up, and suddenly I'm not just getting on a commuter train. It seems like it's really more important. So that's been my attraction. But if you haven't heard Schoenberg, one good place to start is the Piano Concerto, Opus 42. It's available on YouTube by Alfred Brendel. He's the pianist. So, Jim, I understand you've been to a concert this past weekend.
Yeah, I have. It was just actually last night. There's in Manhattan, downtown around Chinatown. There is a music performance series that's being run from all takes of what I know out of a gentleman's apartment, which I think is kind of a new thing, if not only in New York, maybe everywhere, that I find very refreshing, because it's almost like a house concert idea becoming broader and almost not like a private run thing, but an open performance series that's in a space where there's no there's not a bar atmosphere going on, there's not noise, it's literally a listening room. And not that that's totally new. Actually, the group I heard last night, I'm acquainted with the leader because of a performance series he runs in another part of the city. But anyhow, this series is known or the space is known as Spectrum. It's on 121 Ludlow Street in Manhattan. And it's easily gotten to if you're local or visiting the city. It's off of Delancey Street, where both the F train and I actually came up on the R train and walked over through Chinatown to get there, but it's not hard to get to at all. It's on second floor, so it's really a quiet space and a good range of acts. They have performances there. It's kind of random, but I think it's about 4 or 5 times a month right now. I don't know the gentleman's partner in the production, but it's mainly hosted by a guy named Glenn Cornett. But last night I went to hear a quartet of a friend of mine named Blaze Zuela. His last name, I always wonder if I'm pronouncing right, but it's spelled Siwula. And I have known him for 3 or 4 years. He runs a improvisational performance series at ABC No Rio, which is an arts and activist center on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And he has been running for about 10 years, I believe, this series known as Coma, which I always find kind of entertaining in the name.
Yeah.
But and I cannot right now. I'll have to annotate what Coma stands for. It's like Citizens something something something, and Blaze forgive me for that, but I'll strut that in with an annotation. The quartet was really wonderful. It featured Blaze on clarinet and tenor sax, and a gentleman named Luigi Diane was doing some really interesting stuff he had a Mac laptop, and he was basically live sampling and playing back and manipulating sounds. And there was a point where he was doing where Blaze would play something on the clarinet, and then you would hear the sound coming back and being twisted and inverted and all kinds of things. It was really sweet. The other two members of the quartet were Mosa, or maybe it's Masa Bildner, who was doing, she was vocalist, and she really reminded me of many years ago. Bill Bruford had a project, and I believe the vocalist I'm thinking of was Annette Peacock, but it was a very very sort of free, spatial kind of. It wasn't really scat, because last night Mosa was doing words, but it was really very interwoven voice lines. And then the fourth member of the group was Francois Grillet on acoustic bass, who was also bringing some really interesting textures. But it was all improv, and the name of the quartet is Like a Trance, and it really, kind of exhibited that. It was kind of like the whole thing was a very connected, very spiritual half-hour setting. And I shot a little bit of video, and I'm going to roll that in now and give you a little sample. This is from the opening minutes of the show. So again, that was like a trance from last night's performance, September 21st performance, I should say, in case you see this a year from now. It was at the Spectrum here in Manhattan. This is Words on New Music. This is a new series that Paul and I began in video format after having a history of doing it as an audio podcast. We began it in early August, and this is about our 5th or 6th episode. I am losing count. But we're trying to do these sometimes every week, sometimes every couple of weeks. But we're sometimes doing interviews. Is the last one that you, if you follow this series, you heard with Chris Faisville and Norbert O'Donnell. And sometimes we're just doing review shows, as this one is. But thanks so much for following the series. If you haven't subscribed to it, please do. We're on YouTube at Words on New Music. So again, if you've watched along the way, thank you. If you're new, just found us in a browse, well, thanks a lot, and come back next time. So I'm going to throw the camera out to Paul to say farewell, and then we'll see you next time.
So long.
And for Paul and I'm Jim Goodin, and have a great week, and we'll see you on the next episode of Words on New Music.